The Swedish Royal Navy is the naval branch of the Swedish Armed Forces. It is composed of surface and submarine naval units the fleet as well as marine units, the so-called Amphibious Corps. In Swedish, vessels of the Swedish Navy are given the prefix HMS, short for Hennes Majestäts Skepp. In English, this is often changed to HSwMS to differentiate Swedish vessels from those of the Royal Navy. History: the old Swedish kings organized a Swedish Royal Navy along the coastline through an organization referred to as Attribution. These would be combined rowing and sailing ships. This organization became obsolete with the development of society and advancement of warfare. No later than in the 14th century, the duty to serve in Attribution was replaced by a tax. In 1427, when Sweden was still part of the Kalmar Union, Swedish warships did however participate in the naval battle of Öresund against the Hanseatic League. It is unclear how this force was organized and exactly on what basis. On June 7, 1522, 1 year after the separation of Sweden from the Kalmar Union, Gustav Vasa purchased a number of ships from the Hanseatic town of Quarterbeck, which is often recorded in official Swedish history since the 19th century as the birth of the current Swedish Navy. The Amphibious Corps dates back to January 1, 1902, when a separate coastal artillery was established, and Marinen came into use as the name of the service as a whole. The last decade of the 20th century saw the abandonment of the coastal fortifications and the force became a more regular Marine Corps, renamed Amphibious Corps in 2000. For most of the 20th century the Swedish Navy focused on the threat of a full-scale invasion of Sweden via the Baltic and protecting commercial shipping. Sweden's location on the Scandinavian peninsula makes it highly dependent of maritime trade. 90% imports and exports enter or leave Sweden through the Baltic. In 1972, the government decreed that non-military measures should be used to protect merchant shipping. The resolution led to the decommissioning of all the Navy's destroyers and frigates, though the non-military measures the government intended to use to protect shipping have never been specified. The collapse of the Soviet Union diminished the threat of an invasion of Sweden over the Baltic. However, with the rearmament of Russia, its unstable democratic development, and the potentially increased strategic importance of the Baltic Sea has led to continued support for Swedish naval patrols in the Baltic. In 1995 Swedish mine clearance units furthermore took the lead in clearing the waters of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania of thousands of mines and other explosives. The Swedish Navy has 4 units that are capable of deploying within 30 days. These are a corvette squadron with a support ship, a mine countermeasures squadron with a support ship, 1 submarine, and a forward naval support element. In the near future there will also be an amphibious unit on 30 days standby. The Navy first participated in a UN-led peacekeeping mission in October 2006 when the corvette HSwMS began performing coastal surveillance duties for the United Nations mission in Lebanon. HSwMS was relieved by HSwMS Sundsvall, which returned to Sweden in September 2007. In 2008 the last of Sweden's submarine hunting helicopters was retired, leaving the country with essentially no ASW capability. HSwMS Malmö Paragraph, Stockholm, and Trosa Paragraph took part in the EU-led EUNAVFOR operation off the coast of the Horn of Africa. In 2010, HSwMS Karlskrona was the EUNAVFOR flagship, housing the fleet headquarters led by RADM, Flottiljadmiral, Jan för Paragraph Rundqvist. Organization: until recently, the Navy was led by the Chief of the Navy, who was typically a Vice Admiral. This office has been eliminated, and the highest officer of the Navy is now the Chief of Staff Royal Swedish Navy and Commander Maritime Component Command, Rear Admiral Jan för Paragraph Rundqvist, who is the senior representative of the Swedish Navy unregistered trademark S Combat Forces. The Marine units use the same system of rank as the Army. Naval units equals, 1st Submarine Flotilla located at Karlskrona, 3rd Naval Warfare Flotilla located at Karlskrona, 4th Naval Warfare Flotilla located at Berga at the Moscow Paragraph Naval Base. Amphibious units equals, 1st Marine Regiment located in Berga at the Moscow Paragraph Naval Base. Bases equals, Karlskrona Naval Base located at Karlskrona with detachments at Berga, Paragraf Tuborg and Skredsvik. Equipment. In the decades following World War II, the Swedish Navy was organized around 3 light cruiser groups. In the early 1960s, a decision, known as Navy Plan 60, was made to scrap the cruisers and move towards a larger fleet of smaller vessels. The last cruiser, Paragraf Legion, was sold in 1970 to Chile, where she was renamed Almirante La Tour. The fleet at the time comprised some 24 destroyers and frigates for surface warfare and anti-submarine warfare. The Swedish Navy started to experiment with missiles, based on a recovered German V-2 missile, as early as 1944. The main armament of the fleet was artillery and torpedoes for surface warfare and anti-submarine rockets for anti-submarine warfare. Helicopters were introduced in the late 1950s and 1960s, and this fleet air arm remained an integral part of the fleet and its operations until an independent helicopter arm was created in 1990s. The 1972 decision made by the government to decommission all destroyers and frigates within the next decade limited the Navy's endurance considerably, but the use of smaller short-range ships was at the time deemed adequate for anti-shipping missions along the coast and in the archipelago. In the 1980s, this assessment was proven wrong by repeated failures in anti-submarine warfare operations with inadequate ships and equipment. Today, the largest combat ships are corvettes, which combine surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare and mine clearance functions with a better endurance and seaworthiness than the budget fleet from the 1980s. Since the 1980s, Swedish surface warships have been named after Swedish cities, while submarines are named after Swedish provinces and hunters after Swedish lighthouses. The surface ships are mostly small, relying on agility and flexibility. Examples of these are the Stockholm and Paragraf Tuborg class corvettes. The Navy is currently taking into service the new, larger, Visby class of stealth corvettes. A new submarine class, Gotland, similar to the older VAR-currency Sturga Paragraf Land, has recently been commissioned. Its air-independent Stirling engine enables submerged endurance never before seen in conventional submarines. Gotland has been on lease with crew and all to the U.S. Navy and was based in San Diego. The Amphibious Battalion is built around the Stridsborg NT-90H, a small combat boat capable of carrying 21 troops for fast transports and landings in the archipelago. It is also equipped with larger transport boats, but relies on the Army, Navy and Air Force for heavy transports and protection. Surface vessels corvettes, minesweepers, patrol boats combat boats Stridsborg NT-90, Stridsborg NT-90E. Submarines Gotland class, Tsar Paragraf Diamond Land class. Auxiliary vessels landing craft, a Permil 100G class, 5 landing craft L-50, decommissioned. Auxiliary vessels, HSwMS Karlskrona participated in EU-NAV for Operation Atalanta off the Horn of Africa in 2010, HSwMS Visborg, HSwMS Trossa Paragraf Patrol Craft Tender, HSwMS Arca Paragraf Sund, HSwMS Furusund, HSwMS Fayenra Paragraf Sund, HSwMS Grinsund, HSwMS Belows, HSwMS Urd, HSwMS Agur. Torpedo salvage vessels, HSwMS Pelikanen, HSwMS Pingvine. Transport ships, HSwMS Slina. SIGINT vessels, HSwMS Orion. School ships schooners, HSwMS Falcon, HSwMS Gladden. Ships for navigation education, HSwMS M20, used as a museum ship, HSwMS M21, decommissioned, HSwMS M22, decommissioned, HSwMS Vixen, decommissioned, new Onestra Paragraf MSTADS Gymnasium, HSwMS Altair, HSwMS Antares, HSwMS Arcturus, HSwMS Argo, HSwMS Astrea. See also, Royal Swedish Society of Naval Sciences, Lidang, List of Swedish wars, List of Swedish military commanders, List of Swedish monarchs, List of ships of the Swedish Navy, List of coastal defense ships of the Royal Swedish Navy, Swedish admirals. References. External links, Swedish Navy, official site, GAR paragraph ran for Lund, the Swedish Navy 1788 to Euro 1809, Minsvaper and M20 webpage.